I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, I've said it before, Donald Trump is the greatest scapegoat Democrats have ever had. Plus, we finally have an ID on that sign thief in Olympia who's stealing the political yard signs of school board candidates he doesn't agree with. And the housing crisis in Washington state is so bad that elderly people are being told, just get roommates. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month. We haven't even raised the price with inflation. We've kept it the same. $5 a month. Go to undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and you just click on the banner that says support the show. Hello, and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I said this at the end of the first Trump term, and I was in mainstream news at the time. I had a Sunday political show where I was allowed to give my opinion now and then. And I said at the time that now that Donald Trump was leaving office, Democrats are going to be faced with the reality of the crises that they've ignored in their own states. Because Donald Trump at the time was the greatest gift Democrats had ever received. Truly, as much as the hand-wringing and the suing and the, oh my gosh, Donald Trump's the worst human being on the planet, those first 4 years in his first term gave them an opportunity to use fear to distract their constituents from crises that were getting worse and worse and worse that they couldn't blame on Donald Trump. And so this would have been, 2020? And here I am, and I'm talking about, Donald Trump's out of office. You can't blame him for the homeless crisis that you've created. You can't blame him for the economic turmoil in your cities. You can't blame him for the drug crisis. You can't blame him for the crime crisis. And I was speaking at the time about Seattle and Washington state, but really the same was true, certainly up and down the West Coast and in other blue states that spent 4 years pointing at Donald Trump, saying he's the problem with absolutely everything. And it gave them and their constituents, bought it because they had TDS as well. And they ignored all of these things and the budget holes that these blue states were digging into deeper and deeper and deeper. And I guess part of me thought when I was having this kind of warning in 2020 that, Democrats, when they look in the mirror now, they're not going to like what they see because all these crises have gotten worse and now they can't blame Donald Trump. And maybe I was naive because they continued to blame Donald Trump, even though all these things were happening that had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Throughout Biden's time in office, they continued that fear-mongering about the prospect of another Trump administration, and they successfully got to keep their jobs and got reelected, all on this Trump is bad, while their cities and states turned into literal hellholes. And we're seeing this happen again right now. I mean, look at Gavin Newsom, who's already launched his 2028 bid for president, essentially, but he's over on the East Coast. He's focusing on all of that while California is still dealing with, in a very real way, the crises that have been getting worse in California for years and years and years. And the same is true here in Washington state. I looked at Governor Bob Ferguson's X account, his official account, not his campaign account, his official Governor Bob Ferguson account. Last 10 days, the only things he's posted about are things about President Donald Trump. His last dozen tweets over 10 days. I had to go back to July 1st to find any post about state politics. And it was about his decision to hire an out-of-state company on a lucrative ferry contract because our in-state companies couldn't compete due to our state's environmental regulations and the cost of doing business here. July 1st, every single post since then has been about MAGA Congress, Donald Trump bad, Donald Trump Medicaid, Planned Parenthood, the big, beautiful betrayal of a bill, and how bad energy rollbacks, how bad Donald Trump is for Washington state. And I saw all of those, and at the same time on my timeline, I saw a video right below it. I was on my homepage timeline. So I'm seeing, Governor Bob Ferguson, Donald Trump's horrible for the state of Washington, just feeding my timeline. And then at the same time, I saw this video that was pushed out by our friend Jonathan Cho, who's an independent journalist, and he had taken to the streets of downtown Seattle with Andrea Suarez of We Heart Seattle, who's an outreach activist for the homeless. And I'm not gonna blur these. I made a decision, even if it costs us, I guess, our YouTube channel. I'm not gonna blur this because people need to be confronted with the devastating reality of what's happening in the state of Washington right now. While Bob Ferguson is focused on Orange Man bad, while Seattle's mayor is focused on Orange Man bad, while our congressional delegation is focused on Orange Man bad, there is such despair on the streets of Seattle. People who have been living on the streets in addiction and mental illness for so long that they are literally losing limbs. They're literally decaying on the streets. Here's a video, Jonathan Cho, and it's graphic. Go ahead. Sorry, Nicole.
This video is only 1 second.
Oh, okay. We'll go to the next one. That's totally fine. Go to Crisis 3, if you could, for me, for a second. People literally decaying on the streets of Seattle.
Awful, awful.
Gosh.
It's so sad. I'm so sorry. Please let us take you to the hospital and call an ambulance.
Seems like a bad batch is going around. So many people are ODing.
This is years. This is not an overnight wound.
We've got people literally decaying on the streets of our cities from substance abuse, from living out in the elements. I saw another video that he put out that was a woman missing her fingertips, had to get all her toes amputated because the conditions over the winter, one winter, cost her fingers and her toes, living homeless on the streets of Washington State because of the conditions. Jonathan Cho also, I'm not going to blur this one either. Jonathan Cho out there on the streets within minutes watches a guy overdosing in real time.
Does he need Narcan? Does he need Narcan?
We gave it to him. We already gave it to him already.
Oh my gosh.
Keep pushing it, bro. We need your help. Keep it going, bro.
That's the reality of Washington State. And we've got our governor for the last 10 days straight posting about nothing except Donald Trump. Donald Trump isn't to blame for that. Democratic leadership is to blame for that. Can you imagine being the governor of a state where the drug crisis is so bad, out in the open on 3rd and Pine, what is supposed to be a beautiful tourist area of the state's largest city, people are disintegrating? And all you can tweet about is Donald Trump? The greatest scapegoat they've ever had. The greatest scapegoat they've ever had. It's disgusting. And you might say, well, they can multitask. No, they can't. No, they can't multitask. You go to Governor Bob Ferguson's press releases, press conferences. You go take a look at his social media posts that his office puts out, and you tell me the last time that he posted anything about the drug crisis. You tell me the last time he posted anything about the homeless crisis. He still says the homeless crisis is a housing issue. We've got people dying and disintegrating quite literally on the streets of the state's largest city. And Governor Bob Ferguson is obsessed with Orange Man bad. And it's not just him. Go down to LA, another very similar example. Here's a tweet that Karen Bass had put out. So just to give you a little context here, and we can play it while I talk about it. She said, this is footage from MacArthur Park. Minutes before, there were more than 20 kids playing. Then the military comes through. The second I heard about this, I went to the park to speak to the person in charge and tell them it needed to end now. Absolutely outrageous. She says, the second I heard about this, about the feds going through this park, they were conducting immigration efforts in MacArthur Park. the mayor of LA. The second I heard about this, I went down to MacArthur Park, and she did end up going down to MacArthur Park, and she was surrounded by, a scrum of TV reporters and talking about this will not stand in the city of LA. Except the problem is this particular park has been overrun by drug users for years. And people were posting videos of what that park usually looks like. People dying in the park, people overdosing in the park. This MacArthur Park that she claims was filled with children playing. Now, it's usually people who are in the midst of a mental health crisis, carrying around guns, swimming in the ponds, bathing in the ponds, rather, using drugs, bent over from the fetty leans. And the park has been like that for years. And what did it take for Mayor Karen Bass to walk her happy ass down into the park? Took Donald Trump and a federal force being down there. The second I heard about this, she says, I was down in that park, and she was. But for years, she hasn't cared about going to that park as people are dying in filth and squalor and ruining the park for anyone else to enjoy. Because it's all about politics. Which crisis is worse? Now, you can say, yeah, that's a pretty scary sight, the military marching through a park in an American city. I don't have an issue with her having a problem with that. What I have an issue with her is painting that as a park that children and parents enjoy, and how dare they disrupt this peace when this has been a drug den for years and years and years, and you haven't brought yourself to go down there and deal with it. Because that doesn't help you politically to acknowledge that you have this crisis brewing for years in your city. But what does help you politically is to go down there and get in front of news cameras, because Orange Man bad. While people die and while cities are ruined, the greatest scapegoat they've ever had. And you see, and I saw Mayor Bruce Harrell posting about, we're ready for the World Cup, which is going to come to Seattle next summer. At the same time, Jonathan Cho is putting out these videos of people disintegrating in downtown. You're not ready for the World Cup. You want us to think you're ready for the World Cup, but you're so focused on fighting against Orange Man bad, you'll just go in a month before the World Cup and you'll sweep out all the people who are suffering and drug and addiction and living in filth and squalor and suffering from mental health crises, and you'll move them, a mile down the road, and you'll claim success and say, oh, the World Cup is great and Seattle's a world-class city, and then as soon as it's done, they'll march back in. And apparently no one cares because we keep electing these people. And if they could do both at once, I would feel differently. Look, I understand it's a blue state. I'm living in a blue state. West Coast is blue. I get it, that I am in the minority when it comes to my voting habits. Totally understand. So if you want to push back and fight against things the Trump administration is doing that are impacting the state of Washington, be it from a federal funding perspective or whatever it is, you're going to do that, and that's fine. But don't tell me you care about all the people who are going to be who are going to get more sick or die because they don't have Medicaid. When I could go downtown on any block and see someone dying in real time from the fentanyl crisis that you've allowed to get so bad. You care about human life? You care about human life if you could blame it on Donald Trump. But you've watched, we have one of the worst overdose crises in the nation. The number of people dying on our streets skyrocketing. The number of children and infants dying from exposure to fentanyl. It's going to be 3 times higher this year than it was last year. All those things you can control as the governor. All those lives are within your power to save. But that would be too difficult. That wouldn't be politically palatable. So let's focus on the lives that are being disrupted by President Donald Trump and the other Washington. Coward. Bob Ferguson, I hate to say it. I know this show is called Undivided. You are worthless as a leader, an absolute coward. And you had the audacity to run your campaign on law and order, fixing the homeless crisis, fighting crime. You haven't done any of that. You've made it much worse. And here we are 6 months into your term and you're still obsessed with Donald Trump while people are dying. Disgusting. Shame on you. It's the stuff that pisses me off. Here we are. And then voters, because the media is to blame for all of it. The media could very easily wake up and decide, hey, here's Governor Bob Ferguson 10 days in a row railing against Donald Trump and the cuts to Medicaid and what he says it's going to do to people's lives and to their well-being and to their health. But at the same time, we went to downtown Seattle. There's people dying down there today. And we asked Governor Bob Ferguson, why aren't you talking about that? Could the media not do that today? Is that not a legitimate, non-biased news story? That's just a fact. They won't do it. Why? Are they not smart enough to do it? Are they too lazy to do it? Or are they too beholden to Democrats to do it? Are they too TDS themselves to do it? I don't know. We can do it on this show, but this show caters to a certain segment of the voting population that already isn't supporting people like Bob Ferguson. So it all comes down to the media, what the media is willing to expose to the passive news consumer. And if the media doesn't do it, the passive news consumer doesn't know about it, and they keep voting for Bob Ferguson because they think that the greatest fight that we're facing as a state is Donald Trump. Despite the fact in 3 years' time, Donald Trump is going to be irrelevant. Wild. I don't know how to fix it. We're trying every day. I don't know how to fix it. It's so frustrating to me. All right. In a much funner story, we've identified the Olympia sign. You know, nothing except everything I just talked about angers me more than someone who just cannot tolerate even the sight of something they disagree with. So they must steal it. They must take it down. The political yard sign issue. I thought we dealt with enough of that in 2024. In fact, I put out a fun little how-to video about how to walk by a political yard sign you disagree with without yanking it out of the ground. I thought it was quite helpful. But we have other elections happening this year, including a bunch of school board races, and that's like ground zero for the unhinged activists. So there's some school board candidates in the city of Olympia, which we did a whole documentary called Operation Indoctrination on the Olympia School District. This is like ground zero for radical gender ideology, racism, all that stuff. So there are two school board candidates in particular who are running with kind of a common sense, hey, let's focus on academics platform. And the activists hate that. So this was a video captured of this activist on a bicycle ripping out a yard sign that they've got it in their hand there for Ryan Smith, who's one of the common sense school board candidates. So we put that out and we thought, well, that's an easy person to identify. Got a good image of their face, their, bike helmet and their bike, fairly distinctive. So the sleuths did what the sleuths do best. And our friend Alicia Perkins is also helping with this. And they found a Facebook page for Rock and Roll, which is a bicycling group down in the South Sound. And there's a picture attached to it that has someone who got the same helmet, looks like the individual in the image. It says, meet the rock and roll team from left to right, Carrie, Duncan, Hannah, Sarah, and Natalie. Natalie there on the right looks an awful lot like the person in the video stealing signs, even has the orange bicycle helmet. Okay, so now we got a first
today. Huh?
I like the accent. So now we got a first name, and we know that this sign thief is very clearly a bicycle enthusiast. Little more digging. Found a post from an X account called I Heart Bikes. And they posted an image of a person on the left riding bikes, and then a male on the right. It says Natalie Nolan Hibbard-Pelly switched from the USAC men's category to the women's. He belongs in the men's category, USA Cycling. Interesting. That man looks a lot like the person in the video. So now we know that the person in the video, who now goes by the name Natalie Hibbard-Pelly, is actually Nolan Hibbard-Pelly, who has been competing as a woman against real women in cycling rather than compete as a man. And this X account has pointed this out many times. Male racer Natalie Nolan Hibbard-Pelly took second in the women's open long course at the Gravel Unravel Bon John Pass Out last weekend. There were complaints about Hibbard-Pelly racing in the women's category, but he didn't let that stop him. What a strong, brave athlete. Sarcasm, of course. So now we know. And why are so many of these left-wing activists trans? I don't care if you're trans, but when you're out and there's like this disproportionate number of like Trantifa, it really makes you wonder, right? And I also care if you are a biological male and you're competing against women. So now we know, and we found more about Nolan, because Nolan was Nolan just a couple years ago and was a mathematics major at the University of Washington. So identified as a man for part of the time at UW, and then started identifying as Natalie Hibbard-Pelly, and even at UW competed as a woman against women in cycling. We learned a little bit more about Nolan, aka Natalie. They were part of an Antifa takeover of the Olympia Red Lion in 2021. That group also vandalized the Olympia mayor's home. Also, a 2018 graduate of Capitol High School in Olympia, one of the most indoctrinating school districts in the nation. Gee, I wonder why. After his time at Olympia High School, he decided to identify as a woman. Could this be what we've been warning about this entire time? Nolan also ran for Tacoma City Council as Nolan Hibbard-Pelly in 2021 while at the University of Washington, and he ran as part of the Tacoma Democratic Socialists. It's all adding up, and the Peace Day Resistance? Nolan's dad is a well-known activist teacher, paraeducator at Capitol High School in Olympia, Mike Pelly. There it is. Da-da-da. That was my... So there we have it. The suspect in the sign theft, which is against the law, and there is an Olympia police report, is one Natalie Hibbard-Pelly, given name Nolan Hibbard-Pelly, a Democratic socialist, a well-known activist who runs in Antifa circles, and we've done the Olympia Police Department's job for them. We know that all this information has been passed on to the Olympia Police Department. It is not okay to steal other people's signs. We need to start throwing the book at these individuals. And so there you go. We will follow up early next week to see if the Olympia Police Department has cited Natalie/Nolan or even made an arrest in this case. Great work, sleuths. Per the usual. Speaking of men competing in women's sports, some good news on the national front. We've been waiting to see what happened with California. Clearly, California is the state that the federal government wants to make an example out of when it comes to men competing against girls. So they gave the state of California a timeline, a deadline, to say, hey, we're going to apologize. We're not going to allow boys to compete against girls in high school athletics anymore. The state of California said, kick rocks. We don't care even if you take federal funding away. And so now Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, and Linda McMahon, the Department of Education Secretary, have announced a lawsuit.
The Department of Justice has filed a lawsuit against California Department of Education and the governing body for women's sports in California. We've made it very clear, only women in women's sports under Title IX. An example in California, a boy who was in track and field. He would have lost every race. Yet in women's sports, he won over 36 medals. Those medals should be returned to the women, as well as no boys will be allowed in women's locker rooms. No longer. We have sued Maine. We're in litigation with Minnesota. We've sent multiple letters. And if you do not comply, you're next. The Department of Education and the Department of Justice, we will protect girls in girls' sports.
Please let us be next. I would love for us to get sued over this. Please, please, pretty please. And so now, instead of taking the easy way out, which I said, this is a very easy thing for Democrats. Public opinion is not on your side in these issues, not by a long shot. Stupid stuff like this is one of the reasons Donald Trump won in 2024. So take an opportunity and just say, okay, the federal government's taking all this money away, so we have to stop allowing this. But they won't do it. They're too proud. They'd have to admit they were wrong. So now they're going to go about it the long, hard way. And at the end of the day, they're going to have to wear this issue like a badge of shame because they had an opportunity to walk away from it and they won't do it. So we'll see what happens in California, also the ongoing efforts in Maine and Minnesota, and hopefully soon Washington State, because Oregon's already pushing back. There's some individuals there if we go up and down the West Coast. So Oregon, there's been a couple instances of boys winning state titles in Oregon that got a lot of attention. So now there are two female athletes, Sophia Carpenter and Maddie Eschen, who have filed a lawsuit in Oregon against the state's transgender policies, saying that this is interesting, that they felt inspired to finally speak up and do this after Simone Biles had attacked Riley Gaines for her appearance. You remember that Riley Gaines, she's been at the forefront of this keep men out of women's sports issues, and Simone Biles, in juvenile form, called her ugly basically for it, and Simone Biles had to remove her ex account over it. So these two girls decided to speak up.
As we've worked towards this lawsuit, I think as more time has gone on, I felt more and more confident in what we're doing. And I think especially when Riley Gaines and Simone Biles, when that whole thing happened, and kind of seeing how that played out and how the public responded, I think that was encouraging to see how many people are on the side of protecting women's sports. And so I found that encouraging.
I agree with Sophia that it was super encouraging to see Riley just stay strong, have the supporters that really count, that really matter in this situation, and just like surround her and give her support. So that definitely affirmed that I have people out there for me. I have my family. I have the people that matter care, and I now have no fear.
There are so many girls that will benefit from this, that we're doing this for the next generation. Nothing's going to change while I'm in high school. But if we can look towards the future and try to change things now, I think I'll be really grateful in the long run.
I love that. I really do continue to believe that the people who are going to make a change on this are the girls who are impacted and who have been brave enough to speak out. I mean, we've had young girls on this show who've taken a stand that adults aren't even willing to take. So good for those female athletes in Oregon. We're monitoring what happens in California. We're anxiously awaiting. Some just pay attention to us in Washington state, doing what we can, and we're hoping that there's movement on this issue, certainly before the next school year begins. All right, coming up next, Bob Ferguson. He's big mad over money taken away from Planned Parenthood and the one big beautiful bill. We'll talk about it in our segment Unbelievable. First, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com if you're thinking about putting your home on the market. And I've seen more homes popping up lately. I think there's a couple things. I had a conversation with Wes Jones about this because, the interest rates still aren't great, but there's all these homes that are being listed. He says he thinks there's a couple things. There's some layoffs happening around here when it comes to tech jobs. And so you have some tech workers who are maybe looking to move out of the market. You can thank Washington state government for that, for creating a hostile environment for businesses to thrive. So whether maybe you're one of those tech workers, you're thinking about selling your home, or if you've had it with Washington state politics, you're thinking about moving out of the state, or, if you're just moving across the street, reach out to our friend Wes Jones. Who would do that, though? Who would just sell their house and move across the street? That doesn't make any sense. Is that a thing?
Maybe across the state.
Across the state, across
nice
the neighborhood, upsize, downsize, whatever it is. Reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. He and his team, first of all, the quality of everything they put out in the listings, you just don't see it elsewhere. So take a look at how they market their listings, and you'll see why Wes Jones has been so successful as a real estate agent in our area for so long. But I would just start by going to their website and using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Nicole, when are you going to move out of the city? It is so weird to me that you still live in a city.
I know.
Because you are like the antithesis. You need some acreage.
I do.
You need some acreage and some,
Okay.
you need a place where you can have animals. Or
calling all single men with acreage outside the city.
Calling all single men with some acreage and animals. Nicole would love to take care of you and you have to take care of Nicole.
Yeah.
And then take care of your animals. Not take care of her from a fiscal perspective. Take care of her from a love perspective.
I have such a good mortgage rate.
I know.
I bought it the right time. So
you did, but you probably made a good chunk of money on your place.
I know.
So let's get Nicole some
golden.
acreage, or a man with some acreage, shall we? And then you can reach out to Wes Jones to sell your place. Great. Yeah, you need to get out of the city. It's not for you. It's not for you. All right. With that, Planned Parenthood losing some money from the federal government through the one big beautiful bill, and Bob Ferguson is big mad. Let's talk about it in our segment. Unbelievable. I was testing you. Good job. Boop. Okay, as I had mentioned, it pays for Governor Bob Ferguson to obsess over Donald Trump and not to focus on any of the issues facing Washington state, like the massive and only growing budget crisis that we find ourselves in that is predominantly the making of state Democrats. But he had this press conference alongside really people I didn't expect to be there, like Steve Hobbs, the Secretary of State, and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. I did expect her to be there, about Planned Parenthood, which suffered some cuts under the one big beautiful bill. Governor Ferguson posted the victims of cuts from Donald Trump and the MAGA Congress are Washingtonians who will lose their health care provider. Washington will cover the gap caused by the federal attempt to defund Planned Parenthood if Planned Parenthood's litigation is not successful. We can't backfill every cut. However, we must step into this temporary gap to ensure women continue to have access to potentially life-saving care like breast cancer screenings. We will continue advancing our values here in Washington, no matter what happens at the federal level. According to the Washington State Standard, the backfilling would cost approximately $11 million. And Ferguson said he would divert the money from the state health care authority. As the Standard points out, this comes not long after Ferguson signed a new budget from lawmakers that cut state funding for an abortion care program by more than half. Planned Parenthood Alliance advocates called that reduction devastating. That's an interesting little tidbit. Good for you, Washington State Standard. So because of the Democrat-induced massive budget crisis in our state, Governor Bob Ferguson just signed a budget that included cutting an abortion care program here by more than half in a move Planned Parenthood called devastating. But it's Donald Trump who's the bad guy. Wow, that's a good find, Nicole. Great find there. Here's Bob Ferguson at this press conference.
It really is sometimes difficult to find the words to communicate just how cruel and wrong something is. But this bill, my God, the impacts will be affecting Washingtonians for years. Interesting.
So Donald Trump is cruel for defunding abortion care, but you're not cruel for just signing a budget that defunded abortion care? That's strange how that works, right? I would also point out, as we led the show with the videos of people who are losing limbs on the streets of Seattle because of substance abuse and homelessness, that seems cruel to me too, doesn't it? That seems more cruel because those people are dying as we speak. You're worried people might die, that they might not get the breast cancer screening that they need, that they might not get the care that they need from Planned Parenthood, that it could happen. Meanwhile, actively people suffering and dying on our streets under your watch isn't cruel. Strange. Very strange. Unbelievable, you might even say. All right, coming up next, the housing crisis, also something Governor Bob Ferguson is making worse, not better, has gotten so bad that elderly people are being told that they should take in strangers as roommates. What a plan. I'm sorry to leave you guys with a show like this week. I'm trying to have fun. I'm trying to laugh through it because I don't want you to be so depressed by our show that you stop watching it. So I try to have a good time. We'll have that segment coming up next. First, if your retirement portfolio was a sports team, how did it perform in the first half of 2025? Is your advisor making any sort of halftime adjustments? Well, if not, or if you're like, I have no idea how it performed the first half of 2025, maybe it's good for you to join Bulwark Capital's Zach Abraham for his halftime webinar coming up Thursday, July 24th. The halftime webinar is not going to be a rah-rah speech. It's going to be a straight-up X's and O's discussion on global unrest affecting the market, perspective on the outlook for the second half of 2025, plus a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, and give your retirement as much upside as possible. Hear directly from Zach Abraham as he shares insights in this free halftime webinar, Thursday, July 24th. Register now at knowyourriskpodcast.com. And if you can't make the webinar, at least get a second opinion on your retirement portfolio. It's totally free. Schedule your free Know Your Risk portfolio review also at knowyourriskpodcast.com. All right, so one of the key issues that Governor Bob Ferguson campaigned on is fixing our housing crisis. He made a pledge to build hundreds of thousands of additional net units of affordable housing. The problem is every single thing they did this legislative session seems to be working against that. Chief among them, rent control. The builders and the developers said, hey, don't pass rent control because if you do, we're not going to build anything there. So it's kind of hard for Bob Ferguson to say, we're going to build all these new units and then pass a policy that will prevent anyone from coming into the state to build new units. And he claims that homelessness is a housing issue, which isn't true. But if we believe that, then he signed policies like rent control, even in the face of a massive homeless crisis that's only getting worse. So I would not have any faith that we're going to get out of this housing availability crisis anytime soon, given all the policies being passed by this governor and the Democratic majority in Olympia. So people are trying to get creative. don't blame them for that. I mean, we've heard a lot of people, like there's adults who are buying homes together, right? Friend groups who are buying homes together because it's just too hard to be able to afford a house on their own. This one is creative, but quite concerning. This is from The Olympian. Would you consider sharing your Thurston County home? This program can help. So if you live in Thurston County specifically. Perhaps you're a longtime homeowner here, someone who has paid off their mortgage, and yet you can't afford to downsize because of current home costs or average rents in Thurston County that are more than $1,500 a month. The solution might be to take advantage of Senior Services for South Sound's Home Share program, which matches home sharers with home seekers or those willing to rent out a room in their house to someone who needs affordable housing. Senior Services for South Sound Executive Director Brian Windrop calls it the most cost-effective approach to affordable housing because it doesn't involve spending millions of dollars in creating new housing, but takes advantage of existing housing stocks and rooms in these homes. So specifically, what they're hoping for is that seniors, the elderly, will open up a bedroom in their home for someone who's in need of affordable housing. Now, that's a much different situation than, for instance, a senior, who has a basement. They can turn into an apartment that's an individual dwelling unit, and now they're renting it out as sort of a landlord. No, they basically want you to take in people who need an affordable place to live. I don't have to tell you guys, although I will momentarily, what some of my concerns are about that. It says some seniors, for example, are living in long-time homes with empty rooms because their children are adults or perhaps they have lost a spouse. Not only does the arrangement help those living on fixed incomes, but it also addresses isolation and loneliness, which has been shown to be bad for our health. And it's not just for seniors, he said. Working age residents can also take advantage of the program. And although the program was created with single-family homes in mind, it would work in an apartment so long as the landlord agrees to the arrangement. So a couple things that stood out to me. I mean, I think it's sad that we're at this point. That's predominantly what I want to make a point about today. It's sad that we've had our last governor who was in office for 12 years, our current governor who ran on the platform of helping to fix the housing crisis and then immediately signed rent control. It's sad that we're in a place where it's so bad, where seniors are being told, hey, so you don't go homeless, why don't you invite a stranger into your home to share a bedroom or to share the house and rent out a bedroom. They say that through this program, it's like, what could go wrong here? It says they do background checks for the seniors. Okay, that's a good start. And they will provide mediation if there are issues. I see this as being, first of all, there's no way in hell I would allow my mother or would have allowed my grandmother to be part of this program. But it says, for example, there was a woman, this is an example that the program gives. For example, a woman living in her car moves in with an old man and they take each other to doctor's appointments. Doesn't that sound nice?
I mean, they act like roommates is a new concept.
Right.
But in this case, it's vulnerable people with,
right.
I mean, I know you might not have a record before. It doesn't mean you need to be put in a situation. I mean, it could be, there's so many things that could go wrong.
Right.
So many, even just money or
because this is a much more loose relationship than a formal, like, hey, I'm a landlord, you're renting a unit from me. This is like, hey, bring in a roommate. And look, I get it that creative solutions are fine. And I understand that this actually might work for some people and they might be able to find the right roommate. Maybe it's another elderly person who lives with them. I'm totally fine with that. I do think that it's opening a door for like a woman who's living in her car and now she's living with some old dude. And I don't know what circumstances led her to live in her car, but that would kind of freak me out if that person moved in with my grandpa. But it's the fact that things have gotten this bad, that this is their brilliant solution. And meanwhile, they're passing policies like rent control, which is going to mean that will not fix this housing crisis. It will not get any better. It will only get worse. And then they act surprised and have to come up with programs like, hey, move into an old person's spare bedroom. Just like, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. I'm curious because I didn't get to subscribe our show pool today. I apologize. We were running a little bit behind. It was my fault, not Nicole's. Very much so. So I'll maybe push one out to you guys tomorrow when we don't have a show. But I'm curious in the meantime what you think about this. Would you allow your parent or your grandparent, or would you be interested in opening up the spare bedroom of your home under a program like this? So I want to hear from you. In the meantime, or would you? No? Well, would you let your mom and dad do this?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't want them. However, I mean, That's not to say this can't work. I mean, I do see let a friend move in. It's like
Well, right.
companionship, all
Yes.
those things. But, go to the senior center and meet somebody that's a good match. And like, I don't know. It just seems like there could be a better way. But this is an affordable solution is silliness.
Yeah.
It's just rude.
We need to do better for people. Our politicians need to do better so old people don't have to take in strangers into their spare bedroom.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. On the housing front, we want to remind you that if you're interested in housing issues in any form, maybe you're a landlord, maybe you're interested in, can I rent out a spare bedroom of my home to a complete stranger? Sign up for the Engage conference that the Rental Housing Association of Washington is hosting coming up October 22nd and 23rd at Meydenbauer Center in Bellevue. I'll be speaking at it about how the media covers housing issues. So it's just interesting, really, if you're interested in any sort of aspect of the housing conversation. This is a good conference to attend. So if you go to rhawa.org, you can find out, click on their events tab, and then you can find out how to register for Engage. Again, happening October 22nd and 23rd at Meydenbauer Center. And while you're there, if you are a landlord, a small to mid-sized landlord in the state of Washington, consider becoming a member of RHA today. They can help you navigate this crazy situation that we're in with all these new policies. So go to rhawa.org, rhawa.org, and sign up to become a member today. All right. It is Thursday after all. That means we check in on my sister and what's happening in the Sunshine State. I desperately needed an update on Alligator Alcatraz, so we've got a little bit of that, but some other things to get to this week as well.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, hello.
Hello.
Greetings. So we talked a lot on the segment for the last few months about how Governor DeSantis, I should put some respect on his name, was trying to do all these things to help with federal immigration efforts. Like basically, one of the things they passed was a law that says if you come into Florida and you're illegal, that in and of itself is illegal, which at the time I think we're like, well, isn't it already, they're already in the country illegally. So there's like another crime for crossing the border into Florida when you're here illegally. The U.S. Supreme Court has said, yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, basically saying it's possibly unconstitutional. It also kind of encroaches on the federal government's kind of right to oversee immigration control in the country. I think at the time, Ron, as a lot of times, he's very overzealous and he likes to just kind of like layer on things.
Right.
And possibly using it as a deterrent just to keep the number of people coming into this country from coming into Florida. Which I can kind of understand, but, at the end of the day, it's just kind of like you already have a reason to arrest them. You don't need another reason to arrest and charge them and just add another layer of processing to that whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of agree with them kind of just striking this one off the list and be like, you have enough reasons to arrest people for being in the country illegally. You don't need to add more.
And I think what he was maybe trying to do is create sort of an immigration type policy at the state level that could be enforced by local police and then making it easier for them to hand people over to immigration agents. So I don't know. I do get the concept of it, but it would be a slippery slope to start to give states control over immigration enforcement, because I think you could also see blue states try to come up with some sort of ways to, not enforce immigration. And I don't know. So yeah, I agree. I think it was well intended, completely unnecessary. Just continue to work with the federal government to carry out immigration efforts and deportations, et cetera, et cetera. Speaking of, Gator Gitmo, Alligator Alcatraz, or as the left calls it, Alligator Auschwitz. Yes, because they have no shame. There's all these sob stories coming out of, I know, it's bad. There's all these sob stories coming out of Alligator Alcatraz, which, okay, the media is just, life is so miserable at Alligator Alcatraz. What did I tell you, though, would be worse? They were all worried about the alligators, as if they were going to lock the alligators in there with the detainees. What did I tell you was a bigger concern than the alligators?
The mosquitoes.
The mosquitoes. And what are the detainees complaining about?
Elephant-sized mosquitoes.
Exactly, which is great. We're not going to play the call bit because it's in Spanish, so it makes no sense. But basically, it's a detainee like complaining about the conditions, and characterize the call for me. He's like, it was recorded from the outside.
Yeah, so basically he had called his partner on the outside and the call was recorded and he was complaining about the conditions being, they won't let them go outside, that mosquitoes are as big as elephants, And they said that the tents are freezing, which is the opposite of what they had thought was going to be the bad conditions, which are like, it's going to be so hot. It's going to be like sweltering in those tents. Apparently, it's freezing. He said it's like -2 degrees. That's what he said in the phone call, that the tents were so cold. So, those are just some of the complaints coming out of Alligator Alcatraz. And honestly, I've known citizens who have done time in prisons and jails, and I have never heard a rave review. I think anything on the other side of being a free person sucks.
Yes.
So, like, I can't imagine the positive reviews that anybody would have for no matter what detention center they're complaining about.
Yeah. And ultimately, if you don't want to be stuck in a detention center, just be in the United States legally, and we'll avoid a whole bunch of trouble on a variety of fronts. But yes, I do not doubt that it gets very cold there at night, that the mosquitoes are very, very large, and that it's probably not a pleasant situation to be in. But
yeah, I think they just have the AC cranked, like probably to like counteract the media saying it's going to be sweltering.
Yeah.
They're probably like crank the AC up.
Yeah.
And it's freezing.
Yeah, but it does get cold at night in the Everglades.
It does.
Yeah. I watched this show Naked and Afraid, and one time they were in the Everglades and they were just freezing at night. And, you know, these people hopefully aren't naked. I imagine they've got clothes and maybe a blanket or something. But I do want to talk about this guy, though, because there's another layer to his story that the media is picking up on and spinning as sort of a sob tale. And that's that he's a green card holder, I believe, and he's now facing deportation. Which is interesting because they make it sound like, and you hear this a lot, like, oh, he was a lawful permanent resident or he's a green card holder, and they're just snatching up green card holders like for no reason to deport them. But you can be deported as a green card holder.
Yeah, there is multiple ways to be deported as a green card holder / permanent resident. It's different than being a citizen. You are basically in the United States on a guest pass.
Yeah, you're a guest.
Even if that guest pass allows you to live here permanently and work here permanently, it's not the same. You don't get the same rights as being a citizen of the United States. That is the best path to protect your permanent resident status, is to become a citizen. As a green card holder, you can live here and you can work here, but there's multiple ways, from fraud, fraudulent marriages, living abroad for too long, and also committing a crime. And this particular guy was arrested at the beginning of this month for aggravated armed assault with a deadly weapon. He was allegedly, he attacked a tow truck driver who was trying to repossess a vehicle, and that's why he's locked up. And they sent him to Alligator Alcatraz because of his green card status.
Yeah.
And that's why he's there.
Yeah. And it's like, that's very obvious. It's like, because if you had all these protections where you couldn't be deported, then you'd be an American citizen, which I know a lot of lawful permanent residents and green card holders are working their way toward. But in the meantime, this is sort of a test as to whether, you know, you can stay in the United States and earn your citizenship, is how you behave during that period of time. And I just pulled up the list. So if they were inadmissible at the time they received their green card, so for instance, they lied about something, and had they not lied about it, they wouldn't have gotten a green card in the first place, and it's found out, then they can obviously lose their green card. If they violate any terms of their immigration status, including committing certain crimes involving moral turpitude, aggravated felonies, drug offenses, domestic violence, firearms offenses, espionage, things like that, makes sense. As you mentioned, if they engage in any fraud or misrepresentation, that can include marriage fraud. It can include, you know, applying for a job and saying that you're a U.S. Citizen. Becoming a public charge, which I love this one, meaning if within the first 5 years you are dependent on government assistance, then you can lose your green card status, which makes sense because you're just coming in and becoming like a ward of the government and the taxpayers. And there's a lot of other things. So yes, green card holders can lose it. They can be deported. So can lawful permanent residents. And they know these rules. When they agree to these rules, when they get their card, when they get their visitor status, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's I think it's always one of my biggest frustrations about mainstream media and their lack of like educating the masses on these things, because of course, if people knew this, it would blow up their whole narrative behind like, oh, they're deporting citizens. They're not citizens. There's a whole gray area between legal residency and citizenship. It's two different things. And I think if people knew more about that process, they might be a little less quick to jump to judgment on what the federal government's trying to do here.
Right, because you could go through all these headlines where they're like, oh, mother who's been in the US for 34 years, snatched by ICE. And then they leave off the fact that, like, oh, she's a convicted murderer, or, you know, what, and she's in the country illegally and all these things. And it just ruins the sob story sort of thing. Like, I have a heart. I understand that people want to be here for a reason, but we can't just be a country, and no other country does this, where it's like, come one, come all, no rules. Why does the United States have to be like that? That doesn't make any sense. All right, Miranda, great stuff today. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch all these news headlines just get demolished like that on X, where they're like, so-and-so sob stories taken by ICE, and then they leave out the fact that they, you know, criminal history, wanted for violent crime, did XYZ, and it's just gotten out of hand. All right, we'll get to your glorious comments coming up next. First, take the first mark challenge, people. What else do I gotta say to convince you? I'm not just selling an ad here. I'm selling something great, and I'm selling something you don't even have to buy. You're already paying for insurance. Why not go through First Mark Insurance, which is totally free, and have them do it all for you? Have them do all the hard work. And you're going to save money as a result, potentially, which is great. We hear all the time from undivided viewers and listeners that they're saving thousands of dollars a year thanks to First Mark Insurance. You do the First Mark Challenge. It basically entails you scheduling some time, gathering your current insurance so they kind of know what you've got right now, and then they'll talk to you about your insurance needs. If you've got any changes coming up in your life, then go out, they'll shop the market for you. If they're carriers, they'll come back with their recommendations. There's really only two options. Either they're going to say, hey, the insurance you got is really the best that you can get, so you're doing a great job, keep it up, or they're going to say, we can save you a bunch of money. That was the case for Jacob, an undivided viewer, who said they saved, First Mark saved them $600 on their home, $2,000 a year on the family car. Daryl says that they saved them $400 over their current insurance, he says, which I am sure would have gone up even more at the renewal date. So, and he told his daughter about them, and now she's calling First Mark for her home too. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, not the insurance company. So they always have your best interest in mind. All right, let's get to comments. Nicole, you had a sour look on your face a moment ago. What's wrong?
Oh, nothing.
I think I need a Nicole cam that's just in the corner down here so people can see like the facial expression she makes. And she's right in front of me. She's like 5 feet away.
Sorry.
And I'll see her over there. She'll be like, I'm like, is it something I did?
What is it? Habit of when I type, I make facial expressions.
She's over there
to
like,
go, you know, some people talk with hands and I do that as well. But I notice the facial expressions I make when I type, and it's I don't know how to control it.
Is something happening? Is the world ending? Because she'll be over there like, what's going on? Anyway, since I didn't do a daily subscriber show poll because I am a failure after all, I want to get your guys' thoughts on that roommate issue. Would you allow a parent, an elderly loved one, to take in a roommate? Kind of, it's almost like a Craigslist situation, sort of. Let's see here. Night Wolf. So the elderly can have leeches living with them that suck them dry. Well, in theory, the idea is that these people would give them money, obviously. So hopefully they wouldn't be. What is the look? You guys see what I'm talking about? What is that look?
I'm reading everybody's like sugar daddy offers and all this stuff for dating.
Oh, for you?
Yeah, you always get them going on this. I'm like,
sorry.
Oh, geez.
Carenza, what about tenants' rights? What if they don't work out and you can't get them out of the house? Yeah, I don't know what the rules would be on that. Gigi says, no way in hell would I allow that for any aged relative, and no way in hell would I ever consider it. That's insane.
Think about that. The squatters rule.
Right. So what would you
just
do?
Let them in, and then you can never kick them out, even if you like. They offer mediation.
Right.
They don't offer kick them out.
Yeah. No, you'd never get rid of them. Spokane Valley girl, no chance I would let my parents take in a roommate just off the streets. Eric Vasquez, my grandpa used to rent out his spare bedroom to random people from Craigslist on Facebook. Always made me uneasy, but he said he wanted to make good use of his space. Who knows how many of those people had criminal records or were not in the country legally. Although I will say a lot of people use Airbnb and you can rent part of a house, you know, like a bedroom. I mean, you have to kind of live in an area where people, I guess, come to visit or for work or something that would make sense. But that's, you know, so they always kind of do that, right? It's a short-term rental. So maybe I'm over-exaggerating. Maybe I'm just being too...
It just seems problematic.
It does.
Here's one senior that's doing all right and has this extra space, and here's one that needs more. And I get the heart of it. It just seems like it's very open to take advantage of.
Oh, 100%. All right, let's get to some other comments. Trump on the being let me try that again. Trump wow.
See, these facial expressions are for you.
Trump is the greatest scapegoat Democrats have ever had. Holy smokes. Wow. Bill Biz, $20 super chat. I don't think it's possible for any progressive Washington politician to make a speech without mentioning Trump. Yeah. It works for them, but it works for them. So why not? Country guy, has there been an accounting of how much money was wasted on Orange Man bad lawsuits last administration? No, because Bob Ferguson would always say, well, these attorneys are on salary. So, they're just spending they're already hired. So he always had an excuse for it. Toby, bingo, framing the drug crisis as a housing affordability issue is what state leaders like to do to deflect from their failed policies. And they can make more money off of that because these housing programs and all that investments, tax, and they can make more money from it. On the lawsuit filed against California for allowing boys and girls sports, Mauricio says no men in women's sports. That was one of many reasons I left the Democratic Party eternally. 100%. It's a common sense issue. And yeah, is it rare? Sure. But if you cannot admit that there is a biological advantage, what else would I believe you about? What else would I trust you to do?
And it's rare.
It's a litmus test.
So why are we protecting, or why are we, caring so much about 4 or 5 in each state men and not caring about thousands, millions of girls? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. On Bob covering the gap for Planned Parenthood, Matthew Cook says maybe if Planned Parenthood didn't use part of their tax fund money to fund political campaigns and legislation, then maybe this wouldn't be a problem for them. Yeah, I don't know the rules and sort of the bifurcation of funds, but certainly Planned Parenthood is quite political. On Florida Report, Necro Two Shoes, maximum security mosquitoes. Yeah.
They
just
guards.
hover, right? They just hover. All right, on some other things, B. Larson, we sold our house and moved across the street 23 years ago. Oh, I asked, does anybody move across the street? Yeah. B. Larson says, yeah. We loved our neighborhood, but had outgrown our house as our 2 kids grew since we moved for other reasons. We've since moved for other reasons. John says, tell Nicole to move to Georgia. No, houses with land cheap. Men are real men here. Oh, I bet. I'm sure way more.
Not cheap men are real men.
Yeah.
It's land's cheap and men are real.
Land's cheap. Men are real men here. Yes. Yeah. Real men, like real men, but also actual men.
Yeah.
Mitch, I think I'm 10 years younger than Nicole, but I can be her sugar daddy. Nicole likes men who are younger.
Well, there you go.
I think.
I mean, yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
I for one could never have dated a younger man.
I would not go
what's the lower limit?
I don't know. You hate to put a limit on it, but I would say 10 years is probably the limit. If I was just
you date a man who's 10 years younger than you? You know how immature men are?
I do, but at least you're in your mid-30s by then, right? So
I think 40's got to be the limit, the lower limit.
I like that idea better.
Yeah, that's no 30 somethings.
I have a lot of friends married to men who are 8. I literally have 3 friends married to men that are 8 years younger than them. And
no, my husband's 8 years older.
Yes.
And that's better because I love you so much, sweet husband. But men are less mature. So then it kind of, now we're like the same maturity level,
the same maturity
yes.
level.
Again, I love you, sweet husband. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. All right, Cynthia, I'm OD on sugar and caffeine. So I'm sorry, everyone, for any of my behavior today that may offend or hurt anyone's feelings. Nicole, say yes to the sugar daddy offer. Two ladies, it says, Brandi, you're becoming Nicole's matchmaker. Oh, no, I'm not. I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, I will bite. When I come out, Nicole, would you go out for coffee? Though, honestly, a tour would be better in my mind. Oh, I guess I thought two ladies was a chick. I just because it has the word ladies in it. Papa Woody, just a simple meow. I'm not Nicole's matchmaker. I refuse to be Nicole's matchmaker because every time I've tried to be Nicole's matchmaker, she finds a reason to say no.
Okay, we don't have to go into the reasons why.
I know. I just feel like, you don't trust my judgment. Or you're extra picky.
I think there's a different reason for every every suggestion you've made.
Okay, that's fine.
But there's some I'm very open to, but you just haven't made it happen, I guess. But
now it's my fault? I don't know what's happening.
It's went way off the rails.
All right, way off the rails. All right, good comments today. With that, thank you, Nicole. No, if I see someone who's a good one, I'll still pass them along, even though you'll just reject them. With that, let's get to our closing sanity check. I love when I see a clip from like a CNN or an MSNBC and they've got someone on who they don't expect to like Donald Trump. And then this guest will say something nice about Donald Trump, and then it's like this look of panic in their eyes. So on Morning Joe today, the CEO of NVIDIA was on, and he's talking about how great Donald Trump is for industry and manufacturing. And you can see Joe and Mika, they don't like it.
One of the things that we need more than anything right now is we need to celebrate skill craft workers. You know, we've moved away from industrialization and manufacturing for so long that there's a void for the ability to manufacture things, make things with our hands, build factories, manufacturing things. And so I really love the fact that at the moment we're reindustrializing the United States, we're building AI factories. These AI factories need skilled craft. We need to go back and make sure that the trade schools are really well invested in, that we celebrate this entire industry and this entire field.
Man, I agree. I wonder how quick they moved away from that interview when he was talking about how great Donald Trump is for reindustrializing America. All right, that has been today's Sanity Check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Coming up on Sunday, on Sundays with Subscribers, our friend Allie Bradley, a correspondent with News Nation, specializing in border coverage, is going to join us because of everything that's been happening in Texas, from the attacks on immigration agents to what's happening in California and beyond. She is the expert on these things, so she's going to join us for our exclusive Sunday show. If you would like to catch episodes of Sundays with Subscribers, it's pretty simple. You got to pay for it. UndividedPod.com, UndividedPod.com, and then you just click on the banner that says support the show, and then you'll be directed to sign up. So you get access, you get to participate in our daily show polls when Brandi doesn't forget them. And then you get access to Sundays with Subscribers, also our subscriber Q&As, all sorts of stuff. So sign up today. It's such a killer deal. So we'll see subscribers on Sunday. We will see the rest of you freeloaders on the live show Monday at noon.